The Werewolves are on the prowl in Tempe. Arizona State's linebackers were a key reason why the Sun Devils were able to win the Big 12 championship in 2024. And with most of the key contributors coming back in 2025, position coach and Valley native AJ Cooper's group is primed for a title defense. On this episode, AJ and I discuss the rewarding grind of coaching, the impact of the program's culture, a detailed breakdown of the linebackers, the value of a second year in the defensive scheme, and so much more. So let's get to it. Here's my conversation with AJ Cooper. All right, coach. So obviously it was a season that went long into the month of January, which is a good problem to have. And then, of course, spring ball just not too long after that. This is technically the off season, but what does an off season really look like for a coach when you've got, a long season, spring ball, recruiting, the portal, so many plates are spinning at once?
Yeah, I mean, it really never really ends. You kind of hit it on the head. You just kind of shift, I would say, your energy and your focus as a coach, at least, to a different part of the year. So we finished spring football. Now our energy shifts towards recruiting. And it's finishing on some really elite 26s we're on. It's evaluating, going out to practices and seeing kids work out and play, and seeing some of the younger groups get after it a little bit. So. While still maintaining the communication and connections, I can tell you we're on flights watching film of spring ball, seeing how we can get better as coaches and coach our guys better. So, yeah, it's that ability to kind of shift your focus, but not leave other stuff on the back burner and forget about it.
So over the course of summer, are you allotting yourself some time away to recharge, some time with the family, and some fun plans?
Yeah. Coach Dillingham's great in the summer, gives us some time to, kind of get away and do our own thing. So me and my family we have a lake cabin that we go to and kind of just disconnect and just have our own time, and it's regardless of wherever our coach, it's kind of been our place. So yeah, it's certainly excited to do that.
What's obviously it's a lot very rewarding, but also a tough grind. Ultimately, what's your favorite part of being a college coach at this level?
It's a good question. I mean, it's a really good question. Take out like competition and winning, because I think you get to this level. If you don't like to do that stuff, you're not at this level. My favorite part is probably, I had a parent ask me this the other day, I would say probably seeing them graduate and then going to the weddings, because you get to see the final stages of the development that obviously the parents have handed to you, and then, hey, you get to be as a coach a piece of that, right? And so it's like the final check, like, okay, he's going to be okay. He's going to be good in life, whether he's still playing in the NFL, whether, he's a CEO or a doctor, or a lawyer, or a cop, whatever it is. So I think it's those type of things that you go, hey, the job's never finished, but at least the part that I have the most ability to give to that young man has kind of been completed, if that makes sense.
So making it to this level as a coach, I mean, you obviously got to love the game. You got to know the game, embrace all the, the minutia of the game. What are the things about this sport and football in general that you nerd out on the most?
It's probably just the stuff that people don't realize how much time we spend studying, and even studying ourselves and studying other people. You know what I mean? If you don't know, like, I think people think in the off season when we're not recruiting, we're just kind of hanging out. Like, there's a lot of time and effort by a lot of people in this building to improve ourselves as football coaches, and seeing if there's a way to do what we're doing, whether it's studying with schemes that are similar to our own or looking at different things. So I think it's just the amount of time that you put in, because really you're going to put all this time in and you might change two things. You might find that what you're doing is maybe at that moment in time is the best thing to do. So it's just kind of constantly that thirst for gaining knowledge, if that makes sense. So it's taking your lap, your wife looking at you crazy because it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm sitting there watching someone's short yardage run game from last year and seeing how they do it, and then calling that coach and seeing, hey, what the ins and outs are, if that makes sense.
So heading into the third year here in Tempe, Kenny Dillingham, growing as a head coach, coming off a big year at his alma mater. How have you seen Coach Dillingham kind of evolve? From getting his first opportunity to lead a major program to now as leading a defending conference championship program.
Just in going into the third year working for Coach Dillingham, just really seeing, he's very consistent, and I think you see a confidence and consistency in him as far as now when I think things come up, whether it's situations with players or in recruiting, like he's got a standard that he expects us as coaches or the players to meet, and now I think there's there's now tangible evidence in a lot of different areas on why he wants to do things a certain way, if that makes sense. Where sometimes as a coaching staff, I've been told this before, it takes about a full year for a coaching staff to figure out how to work together. And so I think with Coach Dillingham, to answer your question, now he's got going into 3 years worth of experience on why he wants to do things a certain way. And I think that allows us as a staff to really get behind and, whatever message he wants to send to the players, however he wants to recruit a young man, like really understanding why he wants to do something. And so I think there's a great amount of confidence in doing that. I think there's a lot less time for us spending together and figuring out the whys. And coach wants to do it like this, and this is why we've had success doing it. Okay, we're going to roll with it. So I just think the longer a staff can stay together under a head coach like Coach Dillingham, the more continuity and the more consistency that I think we're able to create.
Kenny's obviously a very quotable guy, and which we in the media really appreciate. What's your favorite Dillyism?
Golly, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I would say probably just when you ask him how he's doing, he always goes, life. What's going on? He goes, life is what's up. You know what I mean? And like at first, if you don't know him, it kind of catches you weird, but like that's just him. He's got a ton of energy. I've been telling recruits this. I'm like, what you guys see in the media, it's Coach Dillingham. He's bouncing around here. He's got energy. He's passionate. You know what I mean? And I think especially when kids go to other schools and they see it's not always like that. There's a lot of schools that are 4th and 1 and that are grinding. And there's nothing wrong with that because there's a lot of different ways they have success. But I think it's really refreshing when kids get here and go, oh, what we see in social media or what we saw in this interview, that's actually who he is, if that makes sense.
That's very interesting because I asked that same question to Keyshawn Elliott, and he had the exact same thing. He is life. Whenever I asked him how he was doing, speaking of that level of success, how do you think this team now has kind of handled that success of going on the run, of winning the conference championship, making the Peach Bowl, and now starting to head into the offseason where a lot of the national hype and expectations are starting to build?
Yeah, I think it just Coach Conley did a great job, and Coach Dillingham did a great job, like attacking it in the offseason. You know what I mean? And understanding, listen, it's a new team. There's some really good players, really good leaders that aren't here anymore. You know what I mean? They've gone to the NFL or they've gone to other phases of life, right? So this has got to be a new unit. We've got to establish the standards and do what's going to make us successful. And learn from the past, but realize last year's success was awesome. We'll all look back on that in 15, 20 years and just have some fond memories. But it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with our plan for this upcoming year, if that makes sense. Like us beating someone last year, it's not like people are going to be shaking in their boots. If anything, it puts a big target on our back. And so more than anything, it's been a big focus on the process. It's a big focus on not just how you handle success, but how when we do fail, because failure is going to happen inevitably at some point, how we handle those failures. So I think it's really just getting back to the basics, is focus on this program, this structure, the standards we have here, how we need to work, and kind of continue to block out the outside noise. Whether it's older guys or younger guys, like there's not a real big difference in who needs to hear that message. It's got to be just preached consistently. And as coaches, we have to embody that too, right? You can't just say one thing and then act a certain way. Does that make sense? Like you couldn't come into my office, I'm looking around, and you wouldn't see anything that says anything about a championship in here, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like we have to be aware that whatever we're saying, what our actions are doing, it's going to project to those young men. And so we got to be consistent with that as well.
Program culture seems to have been such a vital part of the success of this team last year, and just kind of the build up. When you look back at, heading into year 3, a couple of years ago, everything's new. The coaching staff trying to instill the standard. And then last year, of course, chip on the shoulder and then having that success. Where do you see this program culture now heading into year 3?
I think we got a very good culture. I'll be honest, it's the number one thing that when I go out recruiting, I talk about our place is our culture. I think by the percentage or the amount of young men that have decided to stay here, when let's call it what it is in this day and age, I'm sure there was other opportunities being afforded to those guys. So the guys that have decided to stay, I think the guys that have left and the things that they've said about this place, unequivocally, I'll say like we probably weren't the most talented team in the Big 12 last year, but I believe we had the best culture. We had a group of guys that was willing to run through a wall for each other. I really was a group of guys that figured out the process and how to practice and what needed to get done every week, if that makes sense. And I think it just says a lot about those young men, and that's something that we're continuing to focus and really hone on, because that's got to be our edge and our difference and our factor. And yes, are we talented and do we have good players? Yes, we do, but so does everybody else. And I think we all saw last year. There's not. I mean, look, going into that last weekend, what were all the tiebreaker scenarios to get into the title game? Right, like
Yeah.
it is a very good football league, and there's not a big difference from the top to the bottom. And so for us, yeah, yes, we need to run the football. Yes, we need to stop the run. We need to play well in special teams. Everybody know those things, but it's really the things that nobody can really measure as far as within our culture, their work habits, the belief in one another, the belief in the staff, and just their bond that they have in that locker room. That stuff is really what's going to make the difference for us in this upcoming season.
So now looking back, in hindsight, what were some of the maybe the key lessons that this team and the players learned from that 2023 season, all the challenges and obstacles that that ultimately kind of paid off in the success of last year?
Yeah, I think anytime you got an emerging team, like there's always kind of games, times during the year when you go, okay, we check that box. We need to do that. I think people don't talk about it much, but going to Texas State and winning that game, in really adverse environment, hot, I believe that was a Thursday night game, if I remember correctly. They jumped out on us. I think at one point it was a 21-7 game, so just a ton of adversity. And I remember going in the locker room and everybody was calm. And that's when I was like, okay, we're going to be all right. You know what I mean? There wasn't yelling. There wasn't screaming one way or the other. Guys were just calm. They were collected. They were taking the coaching. So, things like that, getting a couple of those big, home wins, coming back, beating Kansas, beating UCF teams, I think just winning some close ball games. And then I really believe once we got to 6, it was like kind of all the pressure was off. It really, like, if you were around here, it kind of felt everybody's like, okay, let's just keep going 1-0. What the beautiful part about it, and I've been a part of winning 3 national titles at North Dakota State, is it reminded me of that, is nobody ever talked about what it was going to take to get to the Big 12 title game or win it throughout the year. It was just about going 1-0 and getting better every single day. And if we had just an okay walkthrough on a Thursday, then we needed to have a better practice on a Friday, if that makes sense. And so those were the things that I started to notice throughout the year, like, okay, we got a chance to do something. I'm not going to say what the something is, but we got a chance to do something, because you could see our football team continuously getting better and staying focused on the process and not worrying about what could happen, in 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, if that makes sense.
With having been a part of those championship teams and knowing what it takes to, play football at the highest level and what champions look like, was there a moment last year where like things clicked to you, like, okay, this team is special?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all saw just the way we started playing down the stretch, and whether it was a close game or whether it was with our rivals down south, like when we started clicking on all 3 phases. And I guess more than anything, how much fun our guys had doing it. Like when you see our guys celebrate on the football field or on the bench, like those guys are genuinely excited and happy for each other, if that makes sense. So I think it was just coming down the stretch when we just started to click things off. It probably maybe Kansas State was the one where I was like, okay. But again, I appreciate maybe let's just say some of the national media that morning. If you remember some of those shows, we were being picked, and there was some, let's just say, less than unsavory things being said about Arizona State. You know what I mean? Everybody's entitled to their own opinions, but our kids really started to take that type of energy and use it as a little added motivation while still continuing to stay focused, if that makes sense. And so there wasn't one major sign. It was just a bunch of little signs, and those are all the things that you get when you've got a culture, and you get when guys are more excited for their teammates' success than their own success, if that makes sense.
When you look back on that 24 season, what really kind of jumped out to you, maybe impressed you the most about your group of guys? A lot of new faces in that linebacker room that, obviously playing key and starting roles for you. But overall, collectively, how'd you think the backers did in 24?
Just really, I think we improved from the year before, as a group. I think we were deeper, which is a credit to those guys accepting and really letting the competition push each other to be better players. You know what I mean? I'd be honest, it sounds random, but it was at the back end of the year. I'm as fired up about anything. Week was at 9, 10, 11, 12. If you looked up on kickoff, you'd see probably 5 or 6 linebackers running down on kickoff. Just our guys' willingness to do anything and whatever it took, whether it was special teams, whether it was playing, Caleb playing 50 or 60 snaps, or whether it was Martell playing 10 snaps or anything in between, if that makes sense. Just those guys' willingness, unselfishness to do whatever the team needed them to do to be successful. Um, so just really appreciate those guys and all they sacrifice and put in, because there's a ton of hard work and effort and time and commitment, blood, sweat, and tears, as they say. So I mean, that's why I love coaching those guys in that group, because those guys are, I think they really appreciate being at ASU. They love being here and they love playing for each other.
What were some of your like personal favorite moments from throughout that season?
Oh man, I mean, when it comes to those guys, or just in general?
Just in general for you personally, like some of the moments that you kind of look back upon and maybe cherish the most.
Um, anytime you win a championship, because it for me, anytime I've been a part of winning a championship, it just kind of hits you. It's like all of a sudden you're taking your headset going like, and I won't say what I actually said, but like we did it, and that just, and all those times, just like our players, we get so into the moment, into a tunnel of a process of being successful throughout the week, to give ourselves the opportunity that when it actually does happen, you're like, holy cow, like we're here. Look at, and it's very emotional, because you think about the time and the effort. You think about, like, for me, I think about the time my family sacrifices me not being there, so I can help this program be successful, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's just a flooding of emotions when you win a title. I mean, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, so to do it in that stadium was pretty sweet. I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty cool. um, yeah, there's so many things, how we finished the regular season beating our rival, um, you know, winning some of those games down the stretch. I mean, I could really pick any game and find something special about it, but a lot of it because the way our guys were playing, and what they were sacrificing and what they were doing. It was kind of like a different guy every week, at least defensively, was stepping up and making plays. And it was so cool to see, whether it was CJ Fight, or whether it was Caleb McCullough, or whether it was Shamari, who was arguably, the heart and soul of our defense. Like, just getting to see those guys every week, someone kind of take the turn of kind of holding the torch that week, it was just really fun to be a part of and see.
Obviously, winning a championship's huge and elevating the program and the success that your guys are individually having, but also the Sun Devil fan base that have been really starving for a winner for so many years. How gratifying was it to, as Kenny likes to say, to see the Valley activated?
Yeah, it is. And for me, I guess I have the perspective of growing up here. I remember that I guess the 95, 96 run Rose Bowl team. And I remember that energy that was in the Valley then, and it was that similar type of energy here, where everywhere you go, people are talking about it. The players are local celebrities, it's all over the media, now social media, and just a buzz and an excitement in the air that, I mean, we've got some unbelievable, professional sports teams here. I mean, just amazing franchises. But I will argue, and obviously I'm really biased, that when Arizona State football is rolling, there's not a better buzz in this town. And that is no disrespect to any of those pro sports teams. I just think it's different. And again, I had gotten to see that in '96 with that Rose Bowl team. So it was just a cool, really cool moment. Having, for me personally, having so many family and friends here, but just for our players to get to experience and see how special really Arizona State is.
How did you feel that you grew and evolved as a coach? Going through the success of last year.
Uh, you know, it's funny when you win a lot or when you lose a lot, they're actually the same, because like you get in this mindset of like, okay, what do I need to do to get better? And like when you lose a lot, you're looking at everything like, okay, we got to change this, is this. And when you win a lot, you become hyper focused. In my opinion, at least for me, is like, okay, we're having success. What things do I need to continue to prepare these guys to help them have success? Like, and let's make sure I don't do anything. I don't want to say to rock the boat, but man, what are they doing well? And then, man, what little details, little things can I help these guys get better at? So you just find this state of kind of hyper focus, if you will, on your process and coaching the guys from a daily, at linebacker, it's a daily tools, whether it's in the run or the pass or, special teams, whatever it is. So I think with that, and, there's a lot of lessons that as the older you get as a coach, you kind of draw back on and you start to learn from and go, okay, this correlates to this or this correlates to that. And when you're having success, it's really about, and what's what Coach Dillingham did such a good job of, just let's stay in the moment. Yeah, let's enjoy it. Let's have fun. But let's not think that what we've done in the past is going to ensure victory in the future. You know what I mean? And let's see why we're being successful and keep doing those things, if that makes sense. So, ton of those things. Yeah, I would say those would be the biggest things.
So before we turn the page and talk about the season ahead and the guys in that room right now, Caleb McCullough, his seeing him and just being a door to door devil and all the things that he had experienced during his time in Tempe, and then to end it on such a high note, and seeing him have his own booth at Peach Bowl Media Day was just really cool and something like that. How gratifying was it for you to see a guy that obviously you didn't recruit and he was here when you got here, but put in that work and then ultimately become such a critical player for this defense?
Yeah, I mean, what an awesome story, especially in this day and age where you don't see that happen as much anymore because of the transfer portal and for I was just out kind of in his neck of the woods recruiting, and just to be able to talk to his high school coach about like a guy that everywhere you go when you talk about Caleb and you hear about Caleb, it's just his loyalty, right? His loyalty, his work habits, and it's really cool to see a guy get rewarded with the team and the individual success for staying loyal when things weren't always going well, when he wasn't at the top of the depth chart, when the team wasn't winning, the program wasn't winning, for that guy to stick it out, man, just really happy for him. Good things really come to people that work and that are going to be consistent, and he's certainly one of them. And I think it's like, to me, it's going to be a microcosm of Caleb's life. He's going to be successful in life because of his work habits, because of his loyalty, all the things that ASU football fans got to see. And for me as his coach, I got to see over the last 2 years. That's why Caleb's going to be really successful in whatever he decides to do in life, because it's going to be those same characteristics that carry him through, not just the downs, but the ups in life, if that makes sense.
So the Sun Devil linebackers have a really cool nickname of the Werewolves. What's the origin there? What's the meaning behind it? To have that tag for that group of guys.
I'd be lying if I said I remembered kind of where it came from in my mind. I was at Washington State and just was looking for, I think it was coming out of COVID, and looking for something, I don't know, like a little spark, something a little bit different, something that, I remember I was probably listening to another coach and talking about similar things. And okay, it was like, well, what does it really mean to the players? We had a different nickname at the time. And I just wanted to find something that they could maybe grab onto that was unique and different. And yeah, they just kind of like a lot of, no different than when I introduced it here. Like, it was kind of like, the players kind of roll their eyes at you and kind of, okay, whatever, coach, But then as they kind of bought into it, because for us, it's a mindset, it's a lifestyle. It's off the field, being respectful, being accountable, being humble, being leaders in the community, giving back, being great students, no different. But when we hit the football field, that we're going to flip a switch and we're going to become a different person. We're going to be the guy that, we're going to do things on the field that you can't legally do off the football field. That type of violence and aggressiveness, but that type of passion and enthusiasm. And they just buy into it, and it's a cool thing. It's cool to watch and see, and they have fun with it. And now they take a lot of pride in it. Guys will kind of chirp at other position groups about it. And I'm like, I wouldn't quite do that. Like, that's right now, that's not the group that you want to stir up or mess with a whole lot, because when they get fired up now, they get rolling a little bit. So it's just a cool thing. And now we use it in recruiting. We talk about it in recruiting, and those are the type of guys that we're looking for, that have that ability to flip that switch, if that makes sense. And that are looking for that type of passion and enthusiasm within a position group, and obviously from myself. So yeah, it's kind of taken on life of its own. But those guys, it's all a credit to the players. They buy into it and ultimately make the things happen on the field.
So looking back at spring ball, over those 15 practices, where do you feel that your guys really were able to accomplish, and how much of your kind of spring checklist did you guys get to?
Yeah, I mean, we really went in there challenging the older guys from a mental standpoint. Like, we started off hot from an install standpoint as far as the amount we were going to put in. We really wanted to challenge the guys that, like, hey, we needed to get back to what we were doing at the end of the year from a mental capacity, in our defense, from a scheme standpoint, from a tool standpoint, whether it's recognizing formations, adjusting to different motions and shifts, different just things that as you get deeper into a year and you're able to play football longer, you're able to get to layer 4, 5, and 6. It's kind of like giving a guy an undergrad, a master's, and ultimately a doctorate in defense, if you will. So we were able to, we pushed the guys early on. and then our younger guys, Prayer and Martell's kind of in that phase of being older to younger, but certainly Isaiah, early on, a lot of big wide eyes and having to handle a lot of things. But as we got going and really were able to step back, reteach some things, I was really pleased with how the group finished as a whole. Knock on wood, number one, we finished healthy. Number two, I think from a footwork standpoint, we improved in both the run and the pass. There were some very specific things that coming out of the season that myself and Max Silver, our assistant linebacker coach, took a hard look at, called some people, tried to learn some different ways that, we needed to get better at the position, coaching the position. And so I think overall we got better as a group. So I'm excited to get to the fall. The competition is ever going. Obviously, everybody knows that, some of the competitive pieces that are back, the guys we have back. So I'm excited to get into fall camp. And, it's the fun part now, having an older group is like, okay, how do I keep making it challenging while continue to build consistency? Keep holding the standard. So there's some things they don't even know yet that we're going to do to keep pressing those guys and make it hard on them. Because I'm a big believer in making Monday through Friday hard. So Saturdays they can go out and play free and have fun.
Brian Ward always talks about how the year two is when the why of the defense kind of kicks in for guys coming in, and you have, of course, your top three guys and Keyshawn, Jordan, Zyrus, heading into that second year in the scheme, and just like in watching the practices. It seemed like those guys were just playing, a little bit quicker and smoother. What's it like for you to, have those guys at the top of your depth chart, the veteran guys you're going to be leaning on the most, just, have that ability to be in year two and have that comfort translate?
Yeah, I think you see that. I think if you go back to Caleb, that's what you saw out of Caleb last year. You saw a guy that was in year two in the defense, and just how much more good football players are confident, right? And so when guys aren't thinking, when they're confident what their eyes are seeing, where their feet are supposed to go, how they're supposed to react to things, that's when you get explosive plays. That's, I'm not talking about a linebacker, but look at Shamari. Look at Shamari year two in this defense and how disruptive Shamari is, or Xavier Valladay, or Keith Abney. Javen had played for us at Wazoo. And so it's not just those backers. When you look at a lot of guys in our defense, that was year two or year three playing for us. And that's why they played so much better. So that's why obviously I'm really excited about Zyrus and Keyshawn and Crook going in their second year, Martell Hughes going into his second year in this defense, and how much faster those guys are going to continue to play. Because now we're not just talking about base things as far as their footwork. It's okay, what are we going to get? It's really tendencies that now it's not so much about what we're calling, but we're now able to look at the offense and anticipate by the splits, by alignments, by down and distance, whatever it is. There's certain things those guys can really hone in on, going, okay, we're seeing these two runs and these two passing concepts when you give us this formation in this situation. And when you get linebackers that can think that quickly and understand what they're going to get, man, that's when you get some explosive hits, some explosive plays, on our end. So no, I'm fired up about it. I'm excited about the group.
All right, so I want to run down the guys in that room, get your quick thoughts on where they are right now and what you've seen. But obviously, two guys that are coming in this summer that obviously weren't in spring, so I haven't been able to see them on the field. But Puka and Tristan, what were some of the things that really jumped out to you about why you wanted to make them a part of the Sun Devil linebacker room?
Both culturally, we do things differently here. When we bring recruits on campus, it is obviously, as coaches, we vet through their character from what we're able to evaluate at school and through their families and things like that. But we have them spend a bunch of time with our players, and our players ultimately give the thumbs up or thumbs down on recruits. Like, do they feel like they'll fit the culture? So the first thing is, like, those guys fit the culture, the guys in the room. And I'm not talking about but I think they respected them, felt like those guys would be essentially the next guys that they're going to pass the torch to at some point. Obviously, you watch Puka's film. He's a very physical player, especially in between the tackles. He strikes things. He's aggressive. He's got experience at running back, which I love in linebackers, because the vision in the run game, they understand and they naturally have a feel for when running backs see a picture and are reading, down defensive linemen. They react. They understand how to react the same way they understand when that running back is seeing and thinking. Tristan's the same thing. Tristan was a high school running back and linebacker. Tristan was a very under the radar player, but we saw him at camp. I just think both guys have very high ceilings. Tristan, you're talking about a guy that won state at, I think, 215s this winter, so that type of athleticism, he's going to probably step on campus here at almost 230 pounds now. Like, he was at spring ball and I was like, whoa, he looks good, So I'm really excited to get both here. Puka actually gets here this weekend. Tristan will be coming here a little bit later, but both guys just really excited. They're explosive, physical guys, guys that wanted to be a part of the culture, here and wanted to play for Coach Dillingham in Arizona State. So, one of the big things for us is get guys that want to be here, and they both definitely did. And so I'm excited to get them here and get rolling with those two because, I think they're two young guys that have pretty bright futures.
Isaiah Iosefa is a guy that you mentioned. Maybe a little some bright eye moments early on as he's getting acclimated, making that jump up, and but so a player who earned a lot of accolades at the high school level. And what did you see out of him through his first spring?
I'm excited. I know he had some tough spots earlier, but that's good. It was funny, I was out in Hawaii and I saw his parents, and I want guys to have struggles early on. Martell did too. People just didn't see him as much, but shoot, Martell struggled last spring. Like there's such a low percentage of college players that get to college right away as a freshman and don't struggle. I mean, you're talking about the speed of the game, understanding the complexities of a playbook, strength and nutrition, like class. There's so many different new things to say those guys are going to step in right away and just be the stud they were in high school. It's probably not going to happen. So I would much rather get those guys here and go through some rough patches, but be able to coach and teach and help those guys learn. And like even the way Isaiah finished spring ball, man, I thought he had a really good spring scrimmage, the spring game scrimmage, did some really good things in there, and really excited. Now we get another cycle to now we get to teach instead of him learning off of what he saw last year. Now we get to sit in there and he gets to learn from his own mistakes. He gets to go back down in the weight room with Coach Conley or with our nutrition staff and now have a barometer and a baseline for his individual standards so we can keep raising those. So I'm really excited about him, man. He's got a high football IQ. He's a really good communicator. He's a physical dude in the box now. He's going to come smack you in there. And so the things that he needs to get better at are all coachable things and all things that we can improve on. And so I'm excited about him, man. He's also just got a chance. His personality is different. He's a very outgoing kid. He's got a big smile. I think he's got a really good ability to talk to a lot of different people in the locker room. So I'm going to be really excited to see him grow as a leader as his time at ASU continues to go forward.
And a small school prospect from up north here in Arizona, but Prairie Young Black Goat looks like he's taking advantage and good physical frame on him.
Yeah, you talk about, I mean, I don't want to speak for Coach Conley, but he was one of the guys I know every week when we would meet with our strength staff that he was always mentioned in prayer and the way he was working and developing in the offseason program. And man, it really started, I think things started to click for him around practice. That have been about 5 or 6. Like you just saw the light bulb start to go on. And anytime that happens, then guys start playing confident and they're not thinking as much. And man, I thought coming down the stretch, he had one of the better sprints. Was really excited about him. And you're talking about when you look at his frame, and I think we're not necessarily where he's at right now, but where he can continue to develop and grow. Like if Prairie's down here in Phoenix, he's probably being recruited by a lot more people. And that just is what it is. So certainly excited for him to be here and for him to, I think he's going to contribute and play a lot of football here at ASU by the time his career is over.
Martell Hughes, making that conversion from safety at the high school level to linebacker here, and having some big moments, and winning the Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Week along the way, and it just seems like he's on the brink of making that next step. Where do you see him in his journey and progress?
Yeah, similar to, it'll be funny. We'll sit down next year and Isaiah will probably sit here and go, man, my first spring was rough and then fall camp was better and the season got better. It's funny. Martell sits in there now and having perspective of a spring, a fall, and a season, and just how much he'll tell you how much more confident he is. And I think you see that in his play. I hear it just in the amount that those guys have to communicate with everybody around him. I hear it in his communication to people, whether it's getting things closed or making checks, his communication with me or Max or Coach Ward or Coach Dillingham. Like, I don't want to say it's a different guy, but it's a different guy. And so I'm really excited to get him back in fall camp and throughout the year because, man, Telly's got a high ceiling. He really does. And when Martell starts to believe himself like the rest of us do, the sky's going to be the limit, and I think we're going to start to see that. So I'm really excited about him. We all are, man. He's a great kid, man. Like he's a pleasure to coach. He does all the extra stuff you want him to do. I mean, he's in the Barrett Honors College, so he's crushing it in school. Like he's a good dude, man. Shout out to his parents. They did a great job raising him.
Crew Jackson's a local kid and has some time at K-State now. ASU. Where do you see him in the mix?
Oh man, Crew really did a lot more at both spots this spring, Mike and Will, and really showed up. Crew's always been a physical kid, and if you're watching the scrimmages, there's usually one or two hits of scrimmage where he'd flash, and that big long body's coming out of nowhere and knocking the crap out of somebody. And I just think again, I saw Crew's confidence grow, especially doing some things at Mike this spring. He'd been primarily a Will in the past, and so I saw that grow. And he's a guy that's pushing himself into that competition to get himself on the field. He's a guy that we're going to count on to be a core four guy. He's got a pretty good amount of special teams experience, and he's like one of those guys I was talking about earlier. He's all about doing whatever's best for the team, and I can't tell you we can't have enough guys like that. Crew's a big piece of what we're doing, and I love coaching him, man. He comes into the room with a smile on his face. His teammates love him, man. So he's a great young man.
And Tate Romney's a guy who's had some injuries here and there, but is also when he's been on the field, been a pretty productive player for you. Where do you see him in the mix so far?
Well, he stayed healthy this spring, which was really big, and so that allowed him. Tate's got such versatility to be able to play either linebacker spot, be able to play on 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 15, because he's got such a high football IQ and he's got the athleticism to do that. So, I was just, when I say just, it sounds bad, but man, I was happy that he was able to stay healthy and stay on the field. I think a lot goes into the time he spent with our nutrition staff, with Coach Conley this offseason, kind of tweaking some things to keep his body operating at the I think the best, if that makes sense. So big credit to those two staffs for helping him stay on the field. Jerry too as well. So Tate's a guy that can play. We've all seen that before, and I'm just excited to keep him healthy and get him on the field, because I think that can be a guy that can really help us play better on defense and contribute to our us winning next year.
Cyrus is a guy who really got the season off on a great note with that pick six. And then a couple days ago, you were able to see him, touch upon one of the most gratifying parts of your job, see him walk, as a graduate. Where do you see him now, taking that next step, heading into that second year in this scheme?
So out of everybody in the room, I thought he had the most consistent spring. He really did. And that was one of the big things that myself and our staff challenged him with, is like Cyrus could have some really big highs and some really big lows. And I think he's really matured and even those things out. And you mentioned the graduation, a lot of credit, it's kind of like the werewolf mentality we talk about. Like Cyrus has really embraced that. He's now a scholar baller. And when I got here, he was not a scholar baller. I can tell you that. Or I should say when he got here. And I'm not saying I take credit for that. I think he's built great relationships with Skip and the staff over in academics, and he's really just bought into becoming a better version of himself every day. And so he had such a consistent spring and made some big time plays. And he's a guy that we're really going to lean on to contribute and make plays. And he's got, I think, some unique leadership skills. He's another guy that can talk to everybody in the locker room. He's got a ton of experience. I think he's pretty well respected in the locker room. And so that's a guy that we're going to continue to lean on to make plays for us next year.
And once Jordan Crook got in the flow of things, I think, later in the parts of last season, really a difference maker. And then really, I was really impressed with him, what I saw throughout spring. Where do you see, Crook at this point right now? It seems like he's, in that starting lineup there with Keyshawn.
Crook's a dog. I mean, there's you walk around this building and you ask people that question, they go, Crook's a dog. Like, he, out of I think I'm going on 19 years of coaching, might be one of my favorite players I've ever coached, because just the way he approaches everything. And that's more a compliment to Jordan. It's not a knock about anybody in our group, but like the way, the seriousness and way he approaches football, but yet still has, like, I'm almost jealous because I could never do it as a player. I was always really serious, but I didn't have the ability to like have fun and laugh about it as well. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
I had to be locked in all the time and be breathing fire, where Crook can do that, but then the next minute be loose, or the next minute go be a great mentor to a young guy. You know what I mean? Like, he's he had a dang good spring. You mentioned, like, he shows up, and when he shows up, usually explosive things are happening for our defense. He's got great energy, great passion, man. It exudes to other people. Like, he's a dude that's going to be just as happy if somebody else makes a play as he is for himself. So when I say we're counting on Crook to have a big year, I mean that. Like, I think he's really stepped his game up, and I think he's really bought into being here and want to be a Sun Devil, and really appreciates, I think, what the school and the opportunity has given him. if that makes sense. And man, I mean, he's one of the guys that waves the flag and is an ambassador for us and helps us recruit guys. And yeah, I'm excited about Crook. What you guys saw, we all saw as well. And yeah, we got to get him playing like that this Saturdays this fall, because he's going to make some big time plays.
And of course, Keyshawn, wearing the green dot, the quarterback of the defense in a way right there. And where do you see him, as he looks to level up in his second year at ASU?
Yeah, I just think you saw, like we saw last year, you just saw a guy that is so focused. I mean, he's got a laser-like focus. I think this year what I saw is like now he's starting to be a better leader as far as like his ability to talk to guys in our defense, to communicate with people. Because his work habits I remember Coach Connolly saying within 2 weeks, he knew he was going to be one of the better leaders last year just by the way he works. And I respected it so much because he got here and he didn't say much. He just went to work, right? Well, now he's really developing vocally, you know what I mean? And he's never going to be a guy that's a huge rah-rah guy in our room. That's more Crook and Zyrus. But key, when he's saying things now, people are stopping and listening. He's improved as a player. I think his movement in space, his pass drops, his ability to tackle in space has really improved. So I think you're going to see, I'm excited to see an even better version of what we all saw last fall. And when you combine it with that type of frame and that type of motor too, like he's a guy that I have to pull back at times because like he'll go. And it's a good problem to have as coach. You always want guys that literally will run themselves into a wall. And guys like him and Crook will do that. And it sets the bar high for everybody in our room, because they know if they're not running at that level, if their motors aren't running that hot, then it's not good enough. So you love when your best players are kind of setting the standard for the effort and the passion, the enthusiasm, if that makes sense.
So ultimately this fall, when the third iteration of the Sun Devil Werewolves are taking the field, looking to defend the Big 12 title, what do you hope the fans in the stands are able to see from your guys?
Just, hey, they're playing really hard, that they're really passionate, and they're having a ton of fun. You know what I mean? Like, there's a couple other ways I would say it if we weren't on camera, but that I would say to the players. But that's ultimately the thing, that those guys are playing really, really hard. Like it's always cliche to play it like it's your last play, but they're giving that type of effort. And then when plays are being made, that they're being passionate, they're being enthusiastic, they're celebrating their teammates. Like, we want the fans to bring energy, but really it should be our defense and our football team, our offense, our special teams that's bringing the energy into the stadium, and it's reverberating through the fans. So just a group that's flying around and having fun, and that they're focused on whatever our goals end up being this year.
I'd like to thank AJ for taking the time to talk with me for this episode. Make sure you are subscribed to Speak of the Devils on the podcast platform of your choice for more great sit-down series episodes all off season long. And be sure to follow me on all things social media at bdenny29.